Today, we're digging into something that, well, it just doesn't make sense on the surface. We're talking about the systems that are supposed to help people get out of poverty, but can actually end up trapping them there instead. It's a massive paradox, and we're going to break down exactly how it works. Okay, so let's start with the scenario that just sounds completely backward. Picture this. You've been out of work for months, just scraping by with some help from government benefits to cover the basics. You finally land a job, get that first paycheck, and you think, okay, things are looking up. But then you sit down, you do the math, and you realize you have less money in your pocket than you did before you started working. Exactly. How on earth is that even possible? That's the big question we're going to unpack. And look, this isn't about a simple mistake in your budget. This is about the hidden mechanics of a system that can, without meaning to, punish you for making progress. All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start with that personal story, then we'll define the mechanics of what's really going on. We'll look at the clashing economic ideas behind it, explore a potential solution called UBI, touch on why some people are skeptical, and then wrap up with the one core principle that might just be the key to it all.
So first up, earning a job, losing money. Let's really start with that personal side of things, because behind all the policy talk, there are real people stuck in this incredibly frustrating situation.
Okay, so here's the trap, the real catch-22. That new job you got, it pays just enough to push you over the income limit for the programs that were helping you pay for rent or buy groceries. So poof, that support is gone. The problem is your new salary isn't high enough to cover all those things by itself. And then, on top of all that, you've got new costs, right? You got to pay for a bus pass to get to work. Maybe you need childcare. When the dust settles, the brutal reality is you're working hard, but you have less money than when you were unemployed.
You know, what we just described isn't just a one-off, unlucky situation. It's actually a well-known flaw in the system. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of how this trap is actually built.
Economists actually have a name for this. It's called the welfare trap. It happens because of something called means-tested benefits. That's just a fancy way of saying you only get help if your income is below a certain line. It's meant to make sure aid goes to those who need it most, but it basically creates this invisible cliff. One step over the line, and you fall.
And this is how that vicious cycle plays out. Step 1, you're getting that means-tested aid. Step 2, you find a job and start earning money, which should be a great thing. But then, step 3, your income crosses that magic number. And bam, step 4, the benefits get pulled out from under you. The result? Instead of a gentle ramp up and out of poverty, the system creates a sudden, painful drop.
So this welfare trap we're talking about, it's really just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. Economists call the whole thing poverty traps. These are any situations that just feed into themselves and keep people poor, sometimes for generations. It could be lack of access to good schools, or it could be a whole country dealing with a corrupt government or the effects of climate change. The common thread is that they all create a cycle that is incredibly hard to break on your own.
So, you gotta ask, right? Why on earth are our systems built this way? Why do they create these backwards incentives? Well, it turns out it comes down to a collision between two different ways of thinking about how people make decisions.
Well, a lot of classic economics is built on this one big idea, that people are rational actors. That just means we're all supposed to look at our choices, weigh the pros and cons, and pick whatever's best for us. So if the system is set up where taking a job actually makes you poorer, well, the purely rational choice is to not take that job. It's a terrible choice to have to make, but the math is the math.
And this chart, it just lays it out perfectly. With conditional assistance, our current model, the money you earn from a job often replaces the aid you were getting. That's the disincentive. But with a policy like universal basic income, the money you earn supplements the aid. It just adds on top. And that one little change flips the entire script. Suddenly, working is always a net positive. There's no scenario where you work more and end up with less.
So that brings us to this other idea, this alternative policy that's getting a lot of attention. It's designed to completely tear down the welfare trap by changing the fundamental rules of the game.
And that policy is universal basic income, or UBI. The two most important words there are universal and unconditional. That means everyone gets it, no matter how much you make. There's no income line to cross, so there's no cliff to fall off of.
So if you look at how this is designed from a policy perspective, UBI is all about preserving a person's autonomy, their ability to make their own choices. It creates a stable floor that you can't fall below, which means it can help prevent poverty from happening in the first place. It completely removes the financial risk of taking a new job, because that basic income is always there. Your paycheck just goes right on top, which makes taking that job a clear win and empowers you to make the best decision for your life.
Okay, but as great as all that might sound on paper,
Putting UBI into practice is a whole other story. It's still a really hot topic for debate, and there are a lot of good reasons for skepticism.
You know, this idea isn't some newfangled thing. It's been floating around in some form or another for centuries. And yeah, we've seen some small local pilot programs in recent years, but the honest truth is, when it comes to rolling this out for an entire country, it's still pretty much just a theory.
And this, right here, is the biggest question mark for the skeptics. Sure, a small experiment in one town might look promising, but what happens when you try to scale that up to a nation of millions of people? What does that do to inflation, to the job market, to the whole economy? Those are the huge, unanswered questions that make a nationwide policy a massive leap into the unknown.
So look, whether the solution ends up being UBI or something totally different, the research points to one single foundational idea that any real solution has to be built on.
And it all comes down to this: respecting a person's agency and autonomy. The point shouldn't be to just hand out aid. It should be to empower people to build their own security for themselves and for their families.
And that's really what agency is, right? It's that power you get when you can actually make a choice and then act on it. Any system that really wants to break the cycle of poverty has to be designed to boost that power, to trust people, to give them real options, and to never ever punish them for trying to better their own lives.
So that's what we're left with. It's a huge question. It's about more than just money or programs. It's about power. Just imagine, what could we unlock if our systems were built not around managing poverty, but around unleashing the potential inside every single person by giving them genuine, unpenalized choice?